personal for me. In 1968, I was 10. And I remember coming home, having played basketball at the YMCA. And I came home and my father, his eyes were kind of like watery and things. And I was wondering what was up. And he asked me if I heard the news. And I said, no, what? He said Martin Luther King was dead. And so the impact that this had on me personally was related directly to how my mother, my father, my uncles, and other family members responded to the assassination. And so Dr. King is someone who we have come to love. Now, this is very important because some of us, we ain't dig Dr. King. We ain't dig Martin Luther King. We ain't dig him. And what happened was, what it really had to do with was what we didn't like was how Martin Luther King was being presented to us. They didn't tell us about, for example, the late 60s Dr. King. All they told us about was I Have a Dream, and that how Martin Luther King would talk about just turning the other cheek and so on and so forth. And so the way they presented him to us, we didn't like him. But then when we started studying Dr. King, when we started studying Dr. King from a perspective that didn't have to do with TV and didn't have to do with how they want us to see him, and then we grew, we developed a deeper love for Dr. King. And so it's an honor that we be here. And so when we talk about this whole issue of Wake Up America, what we would like to do is also interject some of the ideas that Dr. King had with respect to all of this. Now, let me also share something with you right here, because the assassination of Dr. King had another personal effect on me. As a 10-year-old, and seeing how the effect that his assassination had on my family, I remember distinctly getting on my knees and praying to the one God that he would make me and let me be an FBI agent so I can stop these type of crimes. This is for real. I prayed to the one God that he would let me be an FBI agent so I can stop these type of things, having seen again how devastated people who I loved had become as a result, as a result of the assassination. Now that was at 10 years old. 10 years later, at 20 years old, as a child of the 60s, wanting to know what happened during the 60s, from an academic point of view, wanting to study it, and wanting to see why the movement ended, and began to study about COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program. And one of the things that we found out in our studies of COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program, was it was the FBI who was actually implicated in his death. And when we found this out, when I found out that the FBI was actually one of the groups that was implicated in the assassination of Martin Luther King, the first thing I thought of as a 20-year-old, the first thing I thought of was back when I was 10 years old and the prayer that I had made. It was the assassination of Dr. King and the involvement, partial involvement of the FBI that made me realize the relationship of African Americans to this government. Some people here, they'll think about other countries, and there are governments in other countries that will kill leaders and so on and so forth. But they don't realize that in America, when we as a people, as African Americans, when we have leaders who come up and stand up, we expect that they will be assassinated. We expect that they will be killed. And you can ask any African American in this country, East Coast, West Coast, Philly, New York, Chicago, LA, you ask any African American, they know, we know, that any leader who stands up, even to this day, and who stands up for justice, he better be ready to die, because our leaders are killed. And so, let me be specific as I get into my topic. When Dr. King went to Memphis, Tennessee, Dr. King had already reserved a room in a hotel. A letter came out, a story came out in the Memphis newspaper, whatever it is, and it was a statement saying, how come Dr. King is not staying in the black hotel? How come he's not staying in the black-owned hotel? How come he's staying at the old hotel owned by white folks? That article